The HOA Tyrant, Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Maplewood Estates, sat perched on her throne, otherwise known as her pristine, perfectly manicured lawn chair, ready to ensure that every shrub, every sidewalk crack, and every carport met her exacting standards. Her lawn was a testament to her reign, with each blade of grass standing at attention, trimmed to uniform perfection. The flower beds, bursting with color, were arranged in symmetrical patterns that would make even the most meticulous gardener weep with envy. As the president of the HOA, Karen had a single, unshakable belief. Order was not just important, it was everything. Rules weren't just guidelines, they were the law. She had memorized the HOA handbook cover to cover and could recite every regulation verbatim. Her clipboard, always within arm's reach, was filled with notes and infractions, ready to be wielded like a weapon against any who dared to defy the established order. Karen's days were spent patrolling the neighborhood, her eagle eyes scanning for any signs of disorder. A car parked slightly askew? A trash can left out a moment too long? A garden gnome that didn't conform to the approved aesthetic? These were the battles Karen Whitmore was always ready to fight. Her neighbors had learned to tread lightly, their every action weighed against the potential wrath of the HOA president. So when she heard about the pit bull puppy and the nude pool parties, she knew it was time to act. The Johnson family, new to the neighborhood, had already raised her ire with their unconventional ways. But this was an affront to everything Karen stood for. She could feel the righteous indignation bubbling up inside her, ready to be unleashed. The pit bull scandal. The Johnson family, new to the neighborhood, had been causing quite a stir. First, it was their adorable little pit bull puppy, Rocky. With his soft, velvety fur and big, soulful eyes, Rocky had quickly become the darling of the Johnson household. But for Karen Whitmore, this innocent pup was nothing short of a ticking time bomb. It didn't take long for Karen to hear about the outrageous behavior happening behind their closed doors. A pit bull in Maplewood Estates? The horror! Karen had always associated pit bulls with danger and chaos, and the idea of one roaming the pristine streets of her beloved neighborhood was unacceptable. She couldn't imagine how the rest of the neighborhood felt. As if the terror of that breed wasn't enough, the whispers of wild, disorganized gatherings near their pool had her blood boiling. No, Karen would not stand for it. She envisioned the neighborhood falling into disarray, the meticulously maintained lawns overrun by unruly dogs, and the once peaceful atmosphere shattered by raucous parties. Armed with her clipboard, Karen marched to the Johnsons' house like an avenging angel, her footsteps echoing with purpose. She rang the doorbell, her face a mask of righteous indignation, ready to deliver a stern lecture on the sanctity of HOA regulations. As soon as the door cracked open, Karen's eyes were immediately greeted by the innocent, bright-eyed pit bull, Rocky. The tiny puppy bounded forward, tail wagging so fiercely it almost looked like a propeller. In that moment, Karen's resolve wavered ever so slightly. How could such a small, joyful creature be the harbinger of chaos she had envisioned? "Oh no, you don't!" Karen gasped, her fingers shaking as she pointed at the puppy. You vicious creature!" She attempted to maintain her stern demeanor, but her voice trembled with a mix of fear and bewilderment. Before she could react, Rocky launched himself directly at her, licking her face like he had just discovered the greatest treat in the world. Karen shrieked, stepping back. "Get away from me, you savage! I'm being attacked!" Her cries of distress echoed through the neighborhood, attracting curious onlookers who peered from behind their curtains. She barely made it a few steps before the puppy happily followed her, and in her panic, she lost all semblance of control. In an almost cartoonish manner, she flailed and stumbled away, leaving behind a trail of dog slobber. Her pristine lawn, once a symbol of her authority, was now marred by the paw prints of her perceived adversary. The Johnsons stood frozen in confusion as Karen stormed off, clutching her clipboard like a weapon, muttering, "This will not be forgotten. I will bring this up at the next HOA meeting." Their bemusement quickly turned to amusement as they watched the self-proclaimed HOA Tyrant retreat, defeated by the boundless affection of their pit bull puppy. The sinful backyard rumors. As if that wasn't enough, Karen soon caught wind of something even more sinister. The neighborhood gossip had spread like wildfire about the Johnsons' clothing-optional pool parties. Karen's mind, of course, ran wild. What kind of depravity was this? She could practically hear the wild music, the raucous laughter, and the disgraceful chaos that surely went on behind their fence. The very thought of such scandalous behavior taking place in her beloved Maplewood Estates was enough to make her blood boil. It was the final straw. Karen's sense of order and propriety had been pushed to its limit. I knew they were trouble. Karen fumed, practically vibrating with rage. This could not stand. Her neighbors needed to know. And by God, she would find out what was really going on at that ungodly pool. She envisioned the Johnsons' backyard as a den of iniquity, a place where the rules of decency were flagrantly ignored. Karen devised a plan, an absolutely foolproof plan, to catch them in the act. There was no way she was letting this debauchery slide. No way at all. She spent hours meticulously planning her stakeout, gathering the necessary equipment, a ladder, binoculars, and a notepad to document every sordid detail. She even considered bringing a camera, but decided against it, fearing it might be too conspicuous. The great backyard stakeout, the fall. That night, Karen snuck out, dressed in dark clothing, carrying a ladder. The moonlight barely illuminated the scene, but that didn't stop her. She was on a mission. She was determined to expose the Johnsons' so-called sinful gatherings and restore order to Maplewood Estates. She positioned the ladder carefully by the Johnsons' backyard fence, clambering up with the grace of an elephant on roller skates. Every creak of the ladder seemed to mock her determination. But Karen pressed on, squinting through the slats, desperate to catch a glimpse of the party. Her heart raced as she imagined the debauchery unfolding just beyond the fence. As she peered over the top, her imagination conjured images of wild music, raucous laughter, and disgraceful chaos. But instead, she was met with a sight that left her utterly bewildered. The Johnsons were simply enjoying a quiet evening by the pool, chatting and laughing with a few friends. There was no wild music, no raucous laughter, and certainly no disgraceful chaos. Crash! The ladder wobbled beneath her, and before Karen could even cry out, she found herself flying into the yard with all the elegance of a disaster. She landed in a heap, her dark clothing now covered in grass stains and dirt. The noise of her fall alerted the Johnsons and their friends, who turned to see Karen sprawled on the ground. Pit bull attack, aka kisses of doom. As she lay sprawled in the grass, Karen's vision blurred with humiliation. The once proud HOA president, now reduced to a disheveled mess, struggled to comprehend what had just happened. But before she could fully process her predicament, she felt something warm and wet, pouncing on her face. Rocky. The puppy had come to her rescue. But to Karen's horror, instead of an attack, Rocky was showering her with slobbering affection. His tiny paws danced on her chest as his tongue lavished her face with enthusiastic kisses. "Ah, I'm being mauled," Karen screamed, flailing her arms in a desperate attempt to escape the onslaught of puppy kisses. Her cries of distress echoed through the night, drawing the attention of the entire neighborhood. The Johnsons, fresh from their swim and wrapped in towels, rushed over, their laughter echoing in the night air as they found Karen wriggling under their dog, her face drenched in puppy saliva. "Karen," Mr. Johnson asked, raising an eyebrow, "what exactly are you doing here?" I came to investigate," Karen stammered, still gasping for air. "You're having illicit gatherings, nude swimming, with a pit bull." The Johnsons looked at each other, utterly bemused. Sure. But that's not really the vibe we're going for." Before Karen could dig herself deeper, the neighbors, drawn by the noise, began to gather around. They stared down at Karen, still struggling to free herself from the affections of Rocky. One of the neighbors, camera phone in hand, captured the moment for posterity. The flash of the camera illuminated Karen's crimson face, now covered in a mixture of dog slobber and humiliation. "Karen, you might need to update those pit bull statistics," someone called out. "Looks like this one is guilty of excessive affection." Laughter rippled through the crowd, the sound of their amusement cutting through the night air. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red as she slowly got to her feet, her clothes now stained with grass and dirt. She clutched her clipboard like a lifeline, her once imposing presence now reduced to a figure of ridicule. The neighbors' laughter echoed in her ears as she slunk away, defeated and drenched in dog saliva. As she made her way back to her house, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that her reign as the HOA Tyrant had been irreparably damaged. The image of her being attacked by Rocky would undoubtedly be the talk of the next HOA meeting, and worse, she was pretty sure someone had taken pictures. Karen Whitmore, the HOA Tyrant, had just met her match, and it was a pit bull puppy named Rocky. The ultimate embarrassment. There was nothing she could do to salvage her dignity. As she slunk away, defeated and drenched in dog saliva, she was pretty sure that someone had taken pictures, and knowing Maplewood Estates, they would be shared at the next HOA meeting. The thought of her neighbors laughing at her expense, reliving the moment over and over, made her cringe. Karen Whitmore, the HOA Tyrant, had just met her match, and it was a pit bull puppy named Rocky. The once feared enforcer of neighborhood rules had been brought low by a bundle of joy and slobber. Her clipboard, once a symbol of her authority, now felt like a heavy burden as she trudged back to her house. As she reached her front door, Karen paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She knew that her reputation had taken a hit, but she was determined to bounce back. After all, order and control were her guiding principles, and she wouldn't let a little embarrassment deter her from her mission. But for now, she needed a hot shower and a moment to collect herself. As she stepped inside, she couldn't help but glance back at the Johnsons' house. The sound of their laughter still echoed in her ears, a reminder of the night's events. Karen knew that she had a long road ahead to regain her standing in the community, but she was nothing if not resilient. And so, with a renewed sense of determination, Karen Whitmore vowed to continue her quest for order in Maplewood Estates. But perhaps, just perhaps, she would approach her duties with a little more humility and a lot more caution. The next day, as Karen prepared for the HOA meeting, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. Her once pristine hair now had a stubborn cowlick, courtesy of Rocky's enthusiastic kisses. She sighed, smoothed it down as best as she could, and headed to the meeting. As she walked into the community center, Karen was met with stifled giggles and amused glances. She squared her shoulders, ready to face the music. Just as she was about to call the meeting to order, a familiar voice piped up from the back. "Hey Karen, did you bring Rocky with you? We could use some of his excessive affection to liven things up." Laughter erupted from the room, and Karen's face turned crimson with fury. She shot a glare at the culprit, her lips pressed into a thin line. Without a word, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the community center, her footsteps echoing with indignation. The laughter followed her out the door, a reminder that her reign as the HOA Tyrant had been forever changed by a pit bull puppy named Rocky.